All right, picture this. You have been looking forward to a day of food and family and friends and time away from work. All of a sudden, somebody comes out of what seems like nowhere and begins throwing those child-free bingos at you. Tell me again why you don't want to have kids. Are you sure you don't want them? I think you might regret them when you're older. All of those are being hurled at you. And often we feel like we have one of two choices. One, hide underneath the table like we're 4 years old, or get very defensive and really derail the whole evening into this defensive stance. Not anymore, my friend. Today, we are going to be talking about preparation and real life what to do during those situations. And then I've got some bonus tips for you. So let's get ready for the holidays, child free style. Hey, welcome to Unapologetically Child Free, the everything that you need in one place podcast for life without kids. I'm Maggie Dickens, a licensed therapist and your child free hype woman, here with candid conversations about friendships, lifestyle, and everything that defines our child free life. So join me on this journey where we get to live life unapologetically. All right, first, it is important to recognize that this episode in particular is coming from the recognition that many people see the holidays not only as joy-filled and potentially time away from work and around people that we care about, it's also full of obligations. And these obligations will vary. And I believe that many child-free people have some additional obligations that those with kids don't. And what I'm speaking specifically to is when I think about life without kids, I think of a simpler life. I think of the fact that I have less to-dos on my plate. I have less money that I have to spend. I have less pressure in many of the places in my life, especially internally. When it comes to the holidays, this freedom that I've created in my life and that you are creating in yours is somehow seen as a commodity that other people can take. And that can look like you're always the one that travels to the holiday location because there's this idea that you have the extra money to travel or you have an easier ability to travel because you don't have kids. And it's not taking into account perhaps what you want to do and what's going on in your life. Another way that that freedom may be attempted to be taken by others is this idea that you may have more time again believing that our time that we give ourselves by not having kids is now a gift to other people. This time that we have is, yes, show up early, help me clean up the house, let me get ready for dinner, help me put up the tree or put up the decorations or what have you. Perhaps it's the, you don't have to put the kids down, so help me clean up afterward. There's this pressure that we have in our society that says we have to be busy all the time. And so if we're not busy with kids, then we need to be filling it with something else. And that obligation that's already beginning before we have even shown up to the holiday is going to cause distress, is going to cause some cortisol spikes. Cortisol is one of our stress hormones in our brain. And we're going to have a cortisol spike. And when we have that, we don't always behave the way that we want to. So, we're going to be talking about ways to keep that cortisol as low as possible to prevent those spikes so that you can show up as the you that you want to be. So, when you are thinking about the holiday season and all of the things and things that you have on your list to do and the places that you have on your list to go, it is important to start with that list and ask yourself, which of these things do I feel obligated to do? And who do I feel obligated to do it for? Today, we're talking about those obligations that we have for other people. And that is the I have to go home, quote unquote, meaning to your parents' house, the people that raised you, or the town that you grew up in, or something like that. And that in itself has several pieces to it, making sure that you have the time off, making sure that you have your animals taken care of if you're not able to bring them, making sure that you're bringing all of the things that you need to take care of yourself while you're there. If you're driving, often that means bringing food and all of that kind of stuff. And that obligation may be because you have invited people to your place, similar to what I like to do as host. And other people say, well, your house isn't kid friendly, or it is so much easier for you to cross state lines, cross town, go across many time zones than me and my multiple children. And so we do it. We get on the airplane, we get in the car, we take the trip, and we make that sacrifice of our time and our energy to show up for our friends and family who aren't willing to do that for us. Already, there's going to be a subconscious potential resentment, potential irritation. That cortisol is already starting to increase. Okay. And the more that we do this, the more years in a row that we're putting in the effort when other people aren't willing to put in that effort, the more likely that cortisol is going to go higher and higher. And we haven't even we haven't even asked for PTO yet. Okay. And so when we're thinking about this, we're thinking from a preventative point of view. When you recognize the obligations. So before we are even in the car on the way to wherever you're going, whether or not it is across town or across the country, it's important to say, okay, I'm coming into this already irritated. So I need to do my normal stuff for my mental health and my self-care, and I have to set those boundaries before I even leave. And so that may mean telling the people who we're going to be staying with that you will not sleep on the air mattress in the communal space, the game room, the living room, the kitchen, wherever, simply because you don't have kids. This is where you're going to stand up for yourself and assert yourself ahead of time. And if they are unwilling to do that, and you are in a financial position to stay in a hotel or some other accommodation, then that is something that I highly recommend. Now, this might not be possible for everyone because of big families, small homes, those kinds of things. It's being aware of these small little pieces as a child-free person. And specifically, if you are child-free and not in a romantic partnership, there's even more of that. Crash on the couch, come be babysitter, etc. And so we have to begin setting those boundaries as early on. And I would say if you can't get out of being in the middle of the living room on the air mattress or on the couch this year, putting it out there before you even leave and say, this is the last year that I'm doing that. Even if it doesn't bother you a ton, if there is the ability for you to assert yourself, highly recommend doing it because it isn't okay to treat child-free people, and especially child-free people who don't have romantic partners, as if they are still children, as if they have not grown up and that they are not adults and don't have adult lives. That's inappropriate. And so I want you to take a look at, is this something that bothers you, and is there some type of a solution? So you are bracing yourself for the holidays. I can feel it. I can feel the muscles tensing up in your whole body. That's that cortisol and norepinephrine and adrenaline that is just beginning to course through your body that is saying, danger, danger, please do something about this. That's what your body is saying. And if this is what's going on, if we are engaging in behaviors that we feel obligated to do and we are bracing for impact, it is pretty much doomed for failure. And we don't want any of that. We want to address each little piece. Thing one was recognizing, is this an obligation or not? And are you bracing yourself? Because it's going to change the whole vibe. If you don't feel as if this is an obligation and you don't feel like you are bracing yourself, the next two things are going to be so much easier for you and probably things that you're already doing. If you are like millions of people and the many, many people who I talk to in the child-free community who are in that place of at least bracing themselves, even if there's no level of obligation, they're bracing themselves, then we need to really focus on the next two parts of this conversation. So if we think from a biological point of view, remember, I'm a licensed therapist, so I'm coming back to how the brain works. The brain is saying the amygdala has decided, whoa, going to the holidays is dangerous. So, what we want to do is we want to recognize that when the brain says that this is dangerous, it's thinking we're preparing for battle. Okay. It is thinking that the holidays is a saber-toothed tiger. And so we need to be strategic about how we approach the holidays in the same way that we would be strategic about how we would approach a saber-toothed tiger, right? So in that strategy, it is important to identify who in these holiday situations and in these holiday events, who are you worried about bringing up and challenging your lifestyle as a child-free person? Who are the people that you can already think of that year after year, they have something to say? These are the people who are most likely going to play child-free bingo with you. Think of those people right now. And as you're going through each person in your own mind, write it down if you have to. Make a note whether or not you want to have a close relationship with that person or not. So, depending on whether or not you want to have a relationship with that person is going to dictate how you respond to them. So, we're going to get to those conversations in just a minute, but we haven't even gotten there yet. You are in the preparation stage. And now it is time to breathe. Taking in a big, deep breath, exhaling, allowing yourself to just be for a moment, settle back in. I can feel the tension in my shoulders just even talking about all of these things. You can do box breathing, you can do 4-4-8 breathing. I tell the people in the Unapologetically Child-Free community to simply focus on your exhale. The more you can breathe out and let your belly kind of expand, the better. What this is going to do is going to help shift your amygdala from the dangerous space into the we're okay space. And that is going to help you do the next thing, which is remember to take care of your mental health and do so through self-care exercises. Things like breathing, things like walking. If you have a regular workout routine, do these things. Do them in the days leading up to the holidays. Do them during the holidays, even if that means that you need to bundle up and go for a walk. If that means that you need to do a makeshift workout in your room, do that. If that means that you need to excuse yourself after dinner to go into your room or heck, in your car and read a book. Or if you need to get in your car and go on a drive, recognize right now before you even get to that holiday event, what do you need and what do you typically do to help keep your mental health the way that you need it to be? How do you take care of yourself? Do those things. Simply being somewhere else does not mean that you have to give up all of these things that you typically do to help yourself feel better. This includes keeping your routines. If you are an early to bed, early to rise person, and you are going somewhere that many of the people are night owls, excuse yourself and go to bed. Keep your routine as much as you can. This is also going to be really, really helpful for your mind and for your body. For me, in the past, one of the things that I would do is I would go for a walk. I love walking. It's my favorite way to move my body and clear my mind. I would go sit in my car, just cars in park. I would go sit in the car and I would call some friends. I would Marco Polo with them. I would listen to some music. I would sit in silence. I would do whatever I needed to do. And these are ways to keep that cortisol down so that when you get bingoed, you will have a lower cortisol level so you can show up the way that you want to. So you can foster those relationships that you've decided you want to keep, and you can navigate those relationships that you don't really care that much about without sinking into defensiveness. We're about to get into the scripts. So one of the things that I will say is there's no need to write all of this stuff down, because if you're like me, you are going to want to have this in writing. And so I have many of these already in my starter pack that I normally sell for less than $10. And I will put a link down there and use the coupon code podcast, and you can get it for free. And so you'll have all of this written down. There are a couple of ways to handle the people that you don't want to have a relationship with, or you don't actually have a relationship with and you don't care to. The first is you can simply ignore them and be evasive. Typically, with boundaries, I don't recommend this. However, in these types of environments, especially where they are short events, whether it is a one-day dinner or it's a long weekend or something like that, it's someone that you see once a year, then it is completely fine if someone were to say, "Hey, you're getting up there. Have you thought about having kids yet?" Or something ridiculous like that. And you can absolutely say, "Happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving," whatever, and walk away if you have that ability. The reason that I say that this is, in this instance, this is okay, is that you are giving to them what they are giving to you. You are not engaging in a conversation that they want to engage in, which is what they're doing to you. They want to engage in a conversation about kids and you don't want to. The key here is we are not being jerks. In no way, shape, or form is this discussion about how can you be a jerk. Because unless that, I mean, you can, if that's the person that you wanna be. Most of us don't. Most of us don't want to feel as if we have to defend our choice, and we want to feel that confidence just coming off of us. Another thing that if someone were to say something like, "You'll change your mind," or, "You'll change your mind when you're older." One of my favorite things to say is, I don't believe that we're close enough for you to know that about me. That is one of my most favorite, because that statement right there is pointing out that they're inferring, they're playing fortune teller with someone they don't know very well. And often that is enough for people to go, "Oh, you're right." If they're open. And if they're not open, they will say, "Once you see your friends having kids, you'll change your mind. It happens to everyone." That's when they're telling you they don't want to have a real conversation with you. They are not interested in talking with you. They want to talk at you. And this is where it is totally fine. You have your cup of water or your glass of wine or your juice or whatever you have. Take a sip, because that sip is not meant to be passive aggressive. That sip is to calm down, for you to take a moment. You take that sip or you take a bite of your food, and then you can either not engage at all and not say anything, or you can change the subject. Remember how I said it's important to know who you want to have a relationship with and who you don't? Because these things are going to happen fast. And if you already know, "Oh, Uncle Bob is walking up to me. He's one of the people that I don't really care about having a relationship with." So you already have these in your mind of what you can say. Now, this next one is "but you'd be such a good mother," or "you'd be such a good parent." This often was said to me over and over and over, because they would see me with my nephew, one of my previous partner's niece and nephew. And this comes up a lot during the holidays because there's a bunch of children coming around. And if you get along with kids and you're on the floor and you're playing, this is often a statement that will come to you. Now, remember, the statement can be the same whether you want to engage in a relationship with this person or not. This specific instance, we're saying, "Hey, you don't want to have a relationship. You don't care to engage with them." Okay. So here's one way that you can respond. And this one is leading with compassion. This one is leading with what I believe many of us value, which is to lead with kindness. Here's what to say when someone says, "But you'd be such a good parent," and you don't care to have a relationship with them at all. I believe that you're meaning to compliment the qualities that you see in me. However, I don't want to have kids. And no matter the qualities that I have, I would not be the parent that a child would need or deserve. That's a bit longer. The thing here is that you're purposefully giving the benefit of the doubt to people, because I often like to think that people aren't purposefully being jerks to us. They have no idea what they're asking. And when we start putting in the boundaries that say, "I'm not talking about this, and here's why," and we are framing it from the point of view of we're taking care of ourselves instead of "I need you to change your behavior," the boundary is much more effective. We're going to switch gears into having the conversations with people that you do want to foster a relationship with. You do want to maintain a relationship with them. Okay. And these answers are coming from my knowledge of relationship work, healthy communication, couples therapy work, that kind of stuff. The reason that we're going to respond in these ways is that we love these people. We want to have a relationship with them. We want to feel heard and understood by them so that we can continue a healthy and open relationship. And so it is necessary in some of these cases to provide some education, to open ourselves up and be a little bit more vulnerable. So you'll hear that in these examples. The first, and this is the easiest, is if it is someone who you have told your choice to. If you've talked to this person about your child-free choice in the past and they are aware of it, then if they bring it up, it is really simple. And this is probably the one that I use the most because it's the easiest. And let's just pretend it's your mom. Mom, I've told you that I'm child-free by choice and I'm not having kids. And I would rather spend this time that we have together talking about things that help bring us closer versus things that will pull us further apart. Hopefully, you can hear in there that there was this clear desire to say, I want to have a relationship with you. And if we talk about this, it's going to make it harder to be in a relationship with you. That example is based off of a script that comes out of couples work that is the when you, I feel script. When you do X, I feel Y. I request Z because I love you. That is basically the script. When you bring up my choice to be child free, I feel misunderstood and unheard. I request that we talk about literally anything other than that. You can put in something realistic. I request that we don't talk about my choice to be child free because I love you and I want us to have a great relationship. That's a really wonderful script to go through. And many of the other ways to handle these conversations with people you want to have a relationship with follow a similar outline. So remember, I said that we're going to do that when we are willing to provide education. We want them to better understand us. One example of that is when someone says it's a woman's purpose or it's an adult's purpose to have kids. Here's an opportunity for me to be vulnerable and to open up the lines of communication about something other than kids, but that's still about me and potentially gets this person asking more appropriate question. I would say something like, my purpose is based in my personal values that I have cultivated throughout my entire life. And living in accordance to the external expectations or somebody else's opinion is not one of those values. Okay. So, what you're doing is you're shifting the conversation away from kids and you're putting it on values work. If you've been around me for any length of time, you hear me talk about living based off of your values and having a value driven life. And if someone hasn't heard that and you're talking about that, I've cultivated my values or I've cultivated my life based off of my values. If someone's really interested in you, the conversation is going to naturally shift from kids to what do you mean by personal values, right? What are some of those values? And now we're having in my opinion, a really interesting and connection building conversation. All right, now to wrap up, I want to give you some final tips. Things that are in addition to these scripts, things that are in addition to the preparation work that you're going to do. So, the first thing is remember that being old from a different time, a different culture, does not give anyone permission to be a jerk. And I mean this about anything being child free, not having a romantic partner, personal beliefs. It is 100% appropriate to hold someone accountable to learning new information. An example is many people will say, "Oh, that's great Aunt Becky. She's 90. She doesn't know any better." And my challenge to that is, as someone who still likes to think of herself as young, I hear that the older generation is, wiser because they have all of this experience. You don't get to tell me that and then also say that you're too old to learn new things. So, to hold you accountable to learning new information and not saying offensive things simply because you grew up in a time where no one held you accountable to saying offensive things. The second tip is I firmly believe in treating people the way that you want to be treated. When that isn't working, treat people the way that you are being treated. If you find yourself treating people the way that you're being treated and it feels icky to you, you feel as if you're being mean, allow yourself to recognize I'm treating them the way they're treating me, which means if I feel as if this is mean, that means they've been mean to me. And I don't believe we need to be jerks. However, if it feels rude to turn the conversation from when they say something like, this is a little snarky and this would depend on the relationship. I think of this as like a sibling or an aunt or something that you are close with and you want to continue being close with. And they say something like, have y'all started trying for kids? My response would be, have you and your partner been having a lot of sex lately? Snarky, I know. However, that's what they're asking. They're asking about your sex life. So if it feels like, oh, ooh, I wouldn't ask about somebody's sex life, that's what somebody asks you when they are saying, have you been trying for kids? I mean, unless the stork is real, which, I mean, that would be news to me. The third tip is to remind yourself that you deserve to be treated with the same respect and acceptance that everyone else is given. And kind of a bonus tip on that is that being tolerated is not being accepted. Simply choosing to not have children, not being in a romantic partnership, having different personal beliefs. These are not reasons to not be given respect. And if someone isn't respecting you or they are working to simply tolerate you, it is absolutely okay to ask for more or to set up a boundary that says, in your own mind, I don't want to have a relationship with someone who's going to treat me with the disrespect that this person is treating me. And then the fourth and final tip is that being kind isn't always being nice. And for people pleasers like myself, this one's so hard. What I mean by that is that I can lean in with kindness by shutting down a conversation, by helping someone recognize that their statement was hurtful and is inappropriate. That is being kind. That is helping them not only in our relationship, but in potential relationships that they would have with other people. If I were to simply be nice, I would be more worried about how they're feeling versus how I'm feeling. So not only am I perpetuating the same cycle, but I'm hurting myself in the process. So remember that it is okay to be kind, even if that means that you're not able to be nice. So go and enjoy the holidays as best you are able. And remember that your holidays do not have to look a certain way. I used this episode to talk about a very traditional model of what the holidays look like. And that's not always the case. So I'm going to have another episode where we're talking about setting our new traditions and having having child-free holidays that look different than that traditional model. That's it from me. Until next week. Ciao, y'all.